Cultural patronage can be described as having these major characteristics. One is the payment of a specific object or work of art, in effect a shopping operation. Two, it is also intended or deliberate support of an individual artist or his career, perceived in terms of potential or level of accomplishment. This had a special relevance if it was considered a client that particular artist would remain stultified if not patronized. And three, patrons supported artistic expression because they believed in intrinsic value or even for its own sake. This implied that they were not aesthetic or considerations, but perceptions of an ideologic nature. A patron was the man or body that requested, paid for, and had purpose for the work of art. The second party, of course, was the commissioned artist or studio. The patron or client requested a work according to prior specifications, while the artist agreed contractually to produce the desired work or manufacture. The work, whether painting, sculpture, building, or fresco, was in reality a bespoke item. The relationship being that of a commercial nature implies that money was an important factor in the production of art, a feature that imbues much of the history of art as a whole. The whole commission was regulated by formal documentation, contracts which described all specifications and requirements. It is interesting that despite its frequency, no standardized contractual form has ever emerged. The transaction was perhaps a reflection of the Renaissance humanist ideals, seen as a highly individual process. Details varied from contract to contract, but commitment to content was nonetheless viewed seriously. Always the contract specified what the painter was to paint, what the client of the commissioning patron was to pay, and the quality of colors to be used, especially with regard to expensive gold and ultramarine. Also, the contract was often for a work often itself fell into an institutionalized form. The work requested for an altarpiece, a family chapel fresco, a Madonna for a bedroom, or a series of frescoes for an internal decorative pleasure. There were five main motives emerge when considering the nature of patronage. Firstly, there is the pleasure of possession, which implies an aesthetic sense beyond mere ownership of a commodity. Secondly, commissioning was an active expression of piety, especially when one considers such artists as Fra Angelico and Masaccio. Thirdly, the patronage commissioned in the spirit of civic consciousness and duty. Fourthly, he commissioned an insurance in his own commemoration. Fifthly, there is an aspect of self-advertisement for some patrons, whether public or corporate. Giovanni Rusoli offered several motives for his patronism, one being satisfaction of personal ownership, two, it serves the honor of God, three, it serves the honor of the city of Florence, and four, it served to commemorate Rusoli himself. On many occasions, patrons, often accompanied by depicted relatives, are to be seen as magi, madonnas, and pious saints, situated within the framework of a commissioned fresco or painting. Rusoli viewed patronage as a means to repay as a donation charitable in nature, even payment of church taxes. Patronage of artists often meant survival and recognition. Alterations in stylistic demand could thus condemn a once popular painter to obscurity. For example, Perugino, whose style, once regarded as old-fashioned, was condemned to retire back to Perugia. Regardless of whether public or private, the commission, its patron, controlled the artist. The artist was thus subject to regulated relationship with the client. The patron initiated the work, chose the artist, and saw the picture through to its completion. Having at the outset stipulated content, subject, amount, and quality of pigment of and which portions of the work had to be done by the artist himself and which of his assistants. Promise. Well, maybe not the last. By 1434, a single family had emerged dominant in the city of Florence, the Medici. Cosimo de' Medici was the patriarch of the family. As head of one of Europe's largest banks, he amassed immense wealth and he used it to control Florence. Even though he himself never held any formal political office, he wielded influence through his clients who sat on the city council. These were men who were indebted to him for bank loans and other favors. Cosimo knew that as Florence was a republic, he didn't have the hereditary power of a monarch. Therefore, he also used his wealth to win popularity with the people. He commissioned numerous works of painting, sculpture, and architecture. For instance, he funded the construction of Europe's first public library in the monastery of San Marco. He commissioned Donatello's David, which he introduced the idea of nude statues. He was the main supporter of Brunelleschi's and his prestige soared when the dome of Florence Cathedral was completed. At his death, Cosimo was landed as father of his country. Cosimo's grandson Lorenzo de' Medici, who took over as head of the family in 1467, continued Medici patronage. He commissioned works by Leonardo da Vinci, Botticelli, and Michelangelo. He was also a personal friend of the humanist Pico della Mirandola. Lorenzo's patronage of artists and scholars earned him the title Lorenzo the Magnificent. In 1471, Lorenzo calculated that since 1434 his family had spent some of $663,000 florins, which is approximately $46 million in 2013, for charity, buildings, and taxes. He wrote, "I do not regret this, for though many would consider it to be better to have a part of that sum in their purse, I consider it to have been a great honor to our state, and I think the money was well expended and I am well pleased."